was one of the most notorious moments of the entire COVID pandemic. As conspiracies spread almost as quickly as the virus in its early months of spring 2020, former US President Donald Trump threw in his own contribution and suggested COVID could be killed by injecting disinfectant, like bleach, into the human body. Let's get a reminder.
Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number on the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that.
Sitting next to the president was Dr. Deborah Birx, the White House's COVID response coordinator, whose stunned reaction to those comments also went viral. Dr. Birx has now written a book about her challenging time fighting COVID alongside President Trump called Silent Invasion. She spoke to me a little earlier in a UK broadcast exclusive, and I started by asking her how she kick-started the country's response to COVID, and crucially, was the president on board with her plans?
That was very much, this is not flu. We need to tell the American people to get prepared. By the beginning of April, as I discuss in the book, there was a different analysis done of my data saying that I had overestimated the deaths of that first wave by 4x. That really only 26,000 Americans would die, not the 100,000 or more that I predicted in the first wave. Of course, I was right, but I think in that moment, I lost significant credibility with the president and some others in the White House. Others stayed with me the entire time and did listen to my messaging, but the president moved away.
Debbie, you have one fascinating exchange in your book, which I read and enjoyed, where you had quite a dialogue with the president early on about whether it was like the flu or not. And he said to you, and I quote, "Well, I've been talking to people who say it is like the flu and they know what they're talking about." Did you have any idea who those people were that he was talking to?
So, that was really the entire task force, including the CDC. They had prepared for a flu-like pandemic. And so in their discussions with the president and in the preparation of the country, they were strictly looking for flu-like symptoms and were missing completely that most of the spread was going to happen in young people and it would eventually get to the vulnerables, but most of the young people would be asymptomatic. That was the point I was trying to make to the president, that you couldn't see this virus and you couldn't see it spread by tracking symptoms. You needed to test.
Let's talk now about that infamous press conference in the briefing room in the White House on April the 23rd, 2020, when the president suggested the possibility of injecting disinfectant into people as some sort of cure or prevention. What was your immediate reaction when he said those words? Because you were there right by him.
So, Tom, thank you, because I think this will be very interesting to your viewers because our media has never reported what was actually going on. So that conversation that you hear in the White House briefing room was between President Trump and Dr. Bryan. These are two men continuing a conversation that apparently started in the Oval Office. We had asked Dr. Bryan to look at sunlight versus disinfectant to really push the ability for children to get out on the playground. So we're trying to get parents and children out on the playgrounds that had been closed. And we felt if we could show that sunlight was equivalent to disinfectant, then mayors would open up their playgrounds to young children to get them outside. So we're focused on that. Somehow, Dr. Bryan goes into the Oval Office and the two of them start this dialogue that this could be a treatment and carry it into the briefing room, unbeknownst to me that that meeting had happened in the Oval Office. These two men are talking. The president is turned his back to me to talk to Dr. Bryan in the corner. And that's why I'm looking at the floor, trying to figure out what is going on. I only asked him to study playground equipment, and he's talking to the president about treatment. And you can see at the very end of that dialogue, he turns to me. But I think this points out a bigger issue, that no one reported this, that there was a conversation between two men. And it wasn't until the very end of the conversation they got to me. And I think I always am trying to figure out, why did everyone want to report that he was talking to me? Is this a gender underlying issue?
Presumably you're reasonably concerned about the prospect of the President of the United States possibly suggesting people inject themselves with bleach as well.
Totally. So that's why I said it was not a treatment. More importantly, though, I went to the CDC and FDA so they could post immediately on their website. And I went to the senior advisors in the White House because I had already had diminished access to the president, as I described at the beginning of April, to make sure that evening that this was corrected so that the next morning he could make it clear that this was not a treatment. Now, he didn't make it as clear as I wanted it to be. And so I also, and the rest of us continue saying it was not a treatment. He said he was joking. I do not believe in that moment that when he was talking to that Dr. Bryant, that he was joking. I think the two of them were having a very male on male serious conversation.
Well, you mentioned British officials and the fight here against COVID obviously going on at the same time. Did you ever have any conversations, for example, with our Chief Medical Officer, Chris Whitty, and did you ever cry on each other's shoulders about the various bosses you had to work for and some of the more interesting things they had to say?
You were very transparent in your data. You were very transparent in your unbelievable sequencing to find variants. So I knew if you had identified a variant, we were going to get it within 3 to 4 weeks. And so you gave us lead time. And what I'm disappointed in, we didn't always use that lead time and the new tools that we had to actually change the fatality rate here in the United States like you did in UK.
Debbie, finally, President Trump spoke to my colleague Piers Morgan a few weeks ago. He wouldn't tell him whether he was running for the presidency in 2024. A lot of people now expect he will run. So 2 questions. If he does run, will you vote for him? And if he wins, will you work for him again?
I have never been political. I will never be political. I keep my faith in politics very personal. That's important to me. I don't make decisions based on politics. I've served my country in multiple administrations, half of them Democratic leaders and half of them Republican leaders. I've served them equally well. I think at this point, I can make more of an impact in the private sector.
And we wish her, obviously, the very best of luck.